Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Calcio Corner. I am your host with the most, Jersey Joe Archino, here with our Inter Milan master, Antonio Coppola. Antonio, a heavyweight bout in Serie A this weekend. Fiorentina against Inter Milan, a battle for the top spot. What did you see in this result?
Well, Joe, you saw it in the result. Fiorentina came into the San Siro in Milan, and they absolutely dominated Inter from start to finish. And when I mean start, I mean the start. Inter concedes a penalty kick in the second minute of the game, and it was all uphill from there. They couldn't really battle back. Fiorentina scored 3 goals in the first 20 minutes of the game. Inter ends up getting a red card. Someone gets sent off. I believe it was Murillo in the back line. They were playing with 10 men the rest of the game, and the final score was 4-1. There's nothing more to be said. It was just an awful loss for Inter.
Now, I think when we look at the positioning in Serie A, right now you have Fiorentina and then you have Inter, both with 15 points with the first spot. But who is the third best side right now in Serie A? I mean, is it Roma? Is it another side? Regardless of positioning, who do you think is the third best side in Serie A?
Well, I think there's a couple teams that are, on the uprise. I think Roma's definitely one of them. They've only won one of their last 3 games. You saw them with a very emotional tie over in the Champions League with Barcelona, and the game after that, they end up losing to Sampdoria. But I really think that they're on the uprise. They bounced back with a win this past week against Carpi, huge win, 5-1. And then Napoli's the other side that you got to look at because they've been playing really well of late. They just beat Juve. They beat Lazio 5-0. So they're really starting to click on all cylinders, especially on offense.
Well, you just mentioned Juve, and I think that's the next point we have to go to. Right now, Juve finds themselves in 15th place. Right now, we talked and we said, look, they beat Manchester City. Would that wake them up? And we thought maybe it would, but they lost to Napoli. They drawed against Frosinone, earning Frosinone their first point ever in Serie A. So, Antonio, let me ask you, are we back to the doom and gloom stage of Juventus?
I think so, Joe. We mentioned it last week. I think you got to hit the panic button for Juve. I know they had that huge win in the Champions League against Manchester City. They come back to Serie A and they draw at Frosinone, where they actually could have lost the game. There should have been a penalty conceded to Frosinone, and it wasn't called. Then they come back this week. They go over to Naples, and they lose to Napoli. So, Juve is a tough team to gauge right now. Again, they're missing a lot of key players that they had from last year, from that great run. They're just struggling all around.
Now, obviously, we have to turn our attention to the Champions League. Big matchups coming today, but none bigger than the news that Lionel Messi is injured, will be missing about 7 to 8 weeks. Now, Antonio, when we look at the shape of the Champions League, clearly Messi's absence changes the game. Now, you still have Luis Suarez, you still have Neymar there, 2 world-class players, as good as it gets. But how does this dynamic change the outcome of the Champions League? Does it change it at all for Roma trying to get out of this group?
I think it changes for the entire group, not only Roma, but you look at a team like Bayer Leverkusen, who's a very solid squad. When you lose a player like Messi, there's nothing more to be said. He's Lionel Messi. He's the best player in the world. So there's no doubt that it changes the dynamic of not only the group, but the team itself. Barcelona is going to have to figure out a way to play without him. You mentioned Neymar. You mentioned Suarez. I think they'll have enough to get it done.
Now, we look back to Juventus, and Juventus kind of surprised us all against Manchester City. Manchester City, 5 wins from 5. They come into that game playing so well. Juventus comes into that game not playing so well, and they end up getting the win. Can Juventus find confidence again with another victory in the Champions League?
This seems to be their competition to play well in this year. Obviously, they're struggling in Serie A, so I do think that they'll come into this game with a little chip on their shoulder, trying to prove something to the rest of the European squads. Again, this is a competition with the best European clubs in the world. So not only do they want to prove it to themselves, but they want to prove it to everyone else. When they go and play in Serie A, they feel like they have things under wraps, but it's shown not to be true, at least this year. So I think Juve is going to find a way to keep it rolling and pick up another win in the Champions League.
Well, you heard it from the man himself. We'll see how everything unfolds, but until next time, I'm Jersey Joe Archino, here with Antonio Coppola.